The internet has killed so much, and at the forefront of its slaughter sits cultural ignorance. Before an infinitely expanding and never-ending digital connectivity touched every corner of the globe, the idiosyncrasies of international peoples were usually only known to those who studied them or had been there. Oh sure, global trade and communication was a well-established thing centuries ago, and once telephone and commercial air travel were made mainstream, cultural exchanges reached an all-time high, but let me put it this way. Think how much you know right now off the top of your head about other cultures thanks to ordinary citizens blasting the most unimportant and boring of information onto the internet for people to see. Not that long ago, conceiving of the little nuances and traditional day-to-days of other nations was a bit of an event. It was really only something you'd get from educational contexts made for that explicit purpose or from stories from people who experienced it themselves. For the vast majority of people, Hollywood movies were the closest that they got to experiencing another country, and that shit was anything but authentic. These days, witnessing an unfiltered look around the globe is as easy as firing up a live stream of someone literally walking down the street 1,000 miles away. Now, all of this is of course in the name of progress. You have people socially smarter and more worldly than ever before, which is only a good thing. But with that progress comes the destruction of something that will probably never experience again in its purest form. Bastardized American localization. You've no doubt seen some of this throughout your lifetime, with some of my favorite examples being Kirby's angry, drawn-on eyebrows to make him look more action-packed, Kamen Rider turning a motorcycle hero stunt show into a bizarrely stupid family drama, which I actually made a whole video on, I'll put in the description, and One Piece deciding to replace the perfectly composed and impeccably catchy We Are with, well,
His name is Luffy. That's Monkey D. Luffy. King of the pirates. He's made of rubber. How did that happen? Yo ho ho, he took a bite of gum gum.
but perhaps most notoriously mainstream of all, and a theme to this video, is Pokemon's original English dub, constantly calling rice balls jelly donuts.
These donuts are great! Jelly-filled are my favorite! Nothing beats a jelly-filled donut.
For this video, I want to focus on the twisting of a very specific Japanese property to meet the demands of more gun-toting, cheeseburger-eating, flag-saluting sensibilities. Today we're going to be talking about the episodes of the Pokemon anime that were banned in America. If you take the quest of Pokemon's Gotta Catch 'Em All expansionistically and then apply it to all the episodes of the Pokemon cartoon, well then your journey is going to leave you short 8 episodes if you hail from the red, white, and blue instead of just the red and white. Now the total could have potentially been higher, as there were 2 episodes that were temporarily banned from Patriot airwaves, meaning there's likely going to be 10 different short videos on the extremely bland clickbait frenzy content channel that your millennial cousin just won't fucking stop sending you stuff from. And those numbers only apply to those who value menu prices over proper wages for teachers. If you're from South Korea, you can get a record number of banned episodes with a whopping 20 entries. And the main reason for that is this: South Korea fucking hates Japan. That's really it. Most of these are censored in South Korea because they directly reference Japanese culture. Now I get it. I get it. There's a lot of historical precedent, but why are you blaming Pikachu for colonialism? Now, aside from that entirely pointless bit of trivia, for this video, I'm going to be watching and reviewing 3 specific episodes of the Pokemon anime that are fully banned in America to this day, as far as I know, and a 4th episode that's banned worldwide and will never ever be seen again in any official capacity. Those episodes are Beauty and the Beach, Holiday Hi-Jynx, The Legend of Dratini, and Electric Soldier Porygon. I've chosen those 4 because they hit all sorts of lovely criteria for what gets me to rant about useless bullshit on the internet. There's a good story behind all of them, they have shocking screenshots and clips that have been passed around the internet for years in hushed tones, they're all from the original series, which tickles my personal nostalgia boner in just the right ways, and they include the cornerstones of my YouTube content: sex, violence, racism, and possible seizures? Okay, wait, I am not racist, I swear. I'm really not. Everyone knows the least racist people are the ones who always have to remind everyone how not racist they are. Now, you can easily tell these episodes are banned because they're nowhere to be found on the official episode list on Pokemon.com. Here you go, seriously, skim it. They're not there. Pokemon's first season is even on American Netflix, and none of these as of this video are there. I checked, they are gone. Pokemon does not want to talk about these bad boys, but you better believe I do. Now just do me a favor and grant me forgiveness on how I may present some of these episodes. I am going to try very hard to avoid picture slideshows, but we all know how copyright is on this bitch of a website, emphasis on bitch. Worst case scenario, you can watch them all along with me if you, if you happen to be adept at sailing the seven seas. That's right, everyone. I've been manning a crew of buccaneers, and we've been sailing the seven seas in search of good lost media. Perhaps you could join me with a few websites and programs. Now let's go ahead and review these episodes in a format you normally would never, ever be able to see again, even if you wanted to pay for it. Arrgh! What the fuck ever. Do you eat food? If you're part of the 81% of people who do, then this video's sponsor is perfect for you, because it's Factor. Factor is the meal delivery service that knows that the modern world has been optimized down to the millisecond, so spending even an iota of time cooking, prepping, or even dreaming about food is akin to throwing your life away. Take back the precious seconds you have on this mortal coil by letting Factor do all the work when it comes to forcing your body's digestive system to stop complaining so much. I'm a busy man, and when I'm taking a break after leaving my 6th girlfriend's house before I visit my 7th, I know it's time to eat a Factor meal, which is super easy to do since all you need is a microwave, the infantile smarts and motor mechanics needed to put the food in said microwave, and the gumption to make all of it happen. Here's some footage of me eating Factor way too uncomfortably close to my camera and microphone. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Factor. And it works well for me because my favorite things in life are ones that fit in my refrigerator, which is why I also sleep in there. Factor offers up to 35 fresh, never frozen meals a week, including keto, calorie smart, vegan, and vegetarian options. So no matter what sort of calories your picky and spoiled body needs, you'll be able to cram them all into your gullet. And they also do breakfasts, smoothies, and midnight snacks, allowing you to fight back the beast of requiring sustenance to survive anytime, day or night. Head to Factor75.com or click the link below and use code HUGBEES50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders. That's code HUGBEES50 at Factor75.com to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month of orders. Factor, the only food fully endorsed by every major religion on Earth, and even some that you've never heard of. Let's start off with the most lighthearted of the bunch, shall we? Beauty and the Beach was an episode of Pokemon banned for one simple reason. America back in the year 2000 was afraid to admit that almost half the planet has giant lumps of fat on their chest. Oh well, nothing's changed. We're still so stupid as a culture that we think showing people flayed alive and bleeding out from torture wounds is more acceptable than some bare ass cheeks. Beauty and the Beach was, for a time, the 18th episode of Pokemon's inaugural season in the West. But as of right now, the original English dub only aired 2 times in total, with the content of the episode being heavily edited. Then it was pulled from the air to die in obscurity as it never made rebroadcast or has been seen on any home media or streaming formats. The episode begins with Ash, Brock, and Pikachu gallivanting in a tourist town at the beach, brazenly unaware that if Pikachu gets startled by a nearby Tentacool and uses Thunderbolt, some 30-odd people are going to die of electrical-based heart failure, because water conducts electricity.
I thought you guys were gonna wait for me by the snack bar. How's the water? It's just weird to see you looking like a girl.
You can ask what in the fuck does Ash mean by looking like a girl and mull over how strange that insult is to Misty's tomboyishness all you want, but for me, the immediate hilarity of this scene is readily apparent thanks to Ash and Brock's casually approached child-style walk cycle. But then Team Rocket shows up, because of course they do, and their plan is to steal money from the tourists through vague, unspecified threats and actions, which realistically just means they'll be doing the same thing that the very tourist town itself does. In their submarine's periscope, they spy a ship headed right for them.
The boat's beautiful. Who's it belong to?
I don't know. Brock's the one who borrowed it.
Stock art Pikachu in the corner there has no problem with the fact that his trainer is a 10-year-old boy who just stole an entire yacht and is flooring it across the ocean at 80 miles per hour, 69.5181 knots. From some banging my fists on my keyboard style Googling, it turns out that getting a boating license in Japan is more lenient than a driver's license. You can get one as early as 15 years old as long as you limit it to smaller vessels and take a test demonstrating that you have proper ocean operational and nautical knowledge. My point in bringing this up is Ash should not be piloting this craft because he's only 10 years old and most likely wouldn't have the necessary 250,000 yen to take the Class 2 boating license exam, and also he's a fucking thief. Damn, short episode, but Team Rocket's dead. Good night. One joke that I'll never get tired of recycling later, Ash crashes the boat into a nearby dock, and the dock owner, named Mo, who also happens to be the boat owner, is pretty fucking pissed about it.
This is all a big mistake.
You remind me of my granddaughter.
Ew. 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 Jesse, James, and Garfield wash up on the beach and immediately ask a local restaurant owner if they can work as waiters to raise funds to repair their Gyarados submarine. So hey, in 1974, a ship called the Glomar Explorer was secretly funded by the CIA to raise an old Soviet submarine from the depths of the ocean. Now, the Glomar managed to snag a hold of the submarine with like a large crane, like a crane game that it sunk into the ocean, but as it was raising the submarine to the surface, it snapped into pieces and pretty much everything the CIA wanted to get from it was lost. The ship, the Glomar, for reference, cost $350 million to produce, which is $1.2 billion in year 2000 money. Now, if we factor in tips and calculate generously, assuming a waiter can make about $100 to $500 a night, well, by my math, hang on, let me open the calculator app here. By my math, they're gonna need to wait like a couple dozen tables to get their submarine back. Somehow Misty convinces the old man that the trio can just work off their debt, so while she begins begging for tips in the back alley, Brock and Ash begin begging for customers to eat at the local snack bar.
Enjoy our seafood and sea views.
What's she doing here?
Jessie looks pretty good in that uniform, too.
Get the fuck out of my way, Ash! There's a girl I can fuck! I know you haven't hit puberty yet, we're probably gonna end up in prison if we don't hold up our end of that legally binding contract, but god damn it, Ash, I can see her ankles, and I just know that means she's asking for it. Team Rocket begin taunting our protagonists, and Misty gets back from filing a police report to join in on the retaliation efforts. Ash, you can't do that. Pokemon battle rules explicitly state only one Pokemon per trainer at a time. Unless it's a doubles battle, or a triples battle, or a rotation battle, or you know what, Ash, do whatever the fuck you want. You stole a boat. You've only got about 11 more minutes of freedom left before juvenile detention comes to act as a safeguard from you being tried as an adult. Ash comes up with a genius idea. Utilize Pokemon to help. They'll do everything from hand out flyers to help cook to why the fuck didn't anyone ever think of this before? Seriously, why is the restaurant still being run with flail squishy humans when you have Pokemon that can cook food by just existing? This is Generation 1. Throw your entire kitchen out the window, get a Rapidash, you see how the flames go down its back? Slap some steaks on there, give that stupid horse an apple if it bitches about the steak juice running down its back, and promptly fire all your employees without severance pay, because if I have to go into detail about how many jobs would be obsolete in the Pokemon world, I'd have to start a new political party over it. The plan is a huge success because somehow, despite one of the most popular theme songs in Pokemon screaming, "We all live in a Pokemon world," no one on this beach has seen a Pokemon before, and them working like literal slave labor is all it takes to drum up a crowd.
Looks like everybody wants to eat in the only Porta Vista restaurant with Pokemon.
Ash, you can't say that. Ash, Meowth is right there. See how obviously agape his mouth is from how hard you just disrespected him? I am about ready to hear Brock step in and say, yeah, Ash, we're the only restaurant with a sassy twink and a stupidly hot bad bitch, too. Meowth sets out on a sabotaging spree, which includes harmless pranks like blowing away the flyers with an industrial fan, dropping banana peels in front of the waitstaff, and starting a full-blown oil explosion, which is fine. If Looney Tunes taught me anything, it's the irony that the more incredible the violence, the less shocking it is. Shoot someone with a gun? I'm scared. Blow them up with an old-timey oil pump? I'm laughing. Some very obvious occasional mishaps cause the entire crowd to leave over the course of 10 seconds, so the gang decides to brood over it the same way an army company would if they just found out that 30% of their fellow brothers in arms didn't make the landing.
Mo, we're really sorry for the way we messed things up for you.
You all did the best you could. At least things were going good for a while until those accidents started happening.
They wrecked your yacht and your dock, which is definitely thousands of dollars in damages, and you're suddenly going to forgive them because your restaurant had one single busy day? Mo, I used to think you were an old pervert, but now I know you're an old fool. But then a big scandalous plot twist happens where Mo himself owes someone money. And that someone is Brutella, the owner of the restaurant Team Rocket's been working at the whole time.
Things keep up like this, you might have to go out of business, Mo. What do you care? I couldn't care less if this dump goes under, but you better figure out some way to pay me back the dough you owe me, and fast!
Oh no, but that means Brutella's also stupid. If Mo owes her money, wouldn't she want his restaurant to succeed so that he can pay her back? I get the power dynamics and obvious sexual chemistry between these two octogenarians, but at least have business sense, Brutella, you stupid bitch. We're back to everyone moping around as Mo correctly comes to the conclusion that he'll never be able to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt money over a single afternoon. Why that much? Well, his only logical conclusion is to give Brutella his yacht to pay off his debt, which means this guy is way in the hole and looking for anything to avoid having Team Rocket bigwigs stomp on his beach and shatter his femurs. You know, funny enough, I was going to say the phrase whatever the Pokemon equivalent of the Mafia is in that previous joke, but then I remembered it's just Team Rocket. Jesse and James are incompetent, but the Mafia is just still Team Rocket. Despite suffering severe cases of Stockholm Syndrome from their time spent as indentured servants, the gang has become attached to Mo's quest to pay off his debt and possibly get access to some of the driest, crustiest pussy the land has ever seen. They all brainstorm an idea to raise enough money by the end of the day until Professor Oak and Ash's fucking mom show up.
How come you two are here?
We'll explain that later. Look at this.
Here, son, if I'm going to be your new stepdad, we're going to have to start bonding now. I heard you like Lord of the Rings, so I got you a comic book. It's called Berserk. The guy at the store said that you would love it. Anyway, go read that while I hope you forget to ask me why I'm at a tourist resort with your mother.
Oak hands them a flyer for a Pokemon and human lady swimwear and costume contest. Ash tries to read it, but Oak screams, "Ash, this isn't the time to use that," because Ash is indoors for some reason.
I'd like to enter the beauty contest.
You should, Misty. There are cash prizes for both the beauty and the costume contests.
Somehow there's like 6 of you out there watching who don't know what this episode is, and I'm going to tell you a very funny fact about it. The reason this episode got pulled is not because Misty is in a bathing suit competition, despite the fact she's like 12. I mean, some of you probably thought you were really clever and said, oh yeah, that's pretty weird, that's why this got banned, that's where this is going, but I can assure you that this is going to be a different and much more blatantly boundary-pushing kind of thing. Pidgeotto flies into the sky and begins shitting out flyers, hyping up the beach contest and clearly giving no fuck to any form about environmental conservation. I guess when your ocean life can propel jet streams of water on command and sink entire continents at will, it's not really something to think about. The contest stadium packs full of people, and Professor Oak and Mom explain why they're at the island as part of a tour group from Pallet Town, which is bullshit, but I believe it. Mom tells Ash she's proud of him and hopes he isn't getting into trouble, which leads to...
I'm the one who got into trouble, Mrs. Ketchum. Ash helped out at my restaurant when I really needed help. But even more importantly, your son has been a great inspiration to me.
That's not true. He owes you money in exchange for you keeping him out of the back of a Poke Squad car. The fact it came with an opportune time wrapped around it has nothing to do with the fact he committed Grand Theft Auto with your giant boat and crashed it into your dock. If you're trying to be the slyest silver fox in the yard and want to one-up the literal PhD grandpa of the Pokemon world, well, at least have the balls to call Ash the little twerp that he is. Knowing how quickly his mom gets around, it's only going to add another, 12 minutes to your personal Bone Zone timer that she's got running in her head. Brock is hired as the beauty and costume contest announcer despite the fact that he only found out it existed about an hour ago, and then someone finally says it.
This is totally embarrassing and degrading, but we need the money.
Oh, it's more than that. It's fucking weird.
Well, this is a very imaginative costume. It's Staryu and Squirtle as extraterrestrials in their flying saucer.
That's Starmie. That's not Staryu, that's Starmie.
Squirtle, squirt.
Great job, Misty.
Stop. Here it is. This scene right here where Misty is shoved out of the way by another competitor is what got the entire episode meticulously scrubbed for content, and then eventually scrubbed out of the memory of the entire Pokemon Company's collective consciousness. This part of the episode never made it to the English dub. For the clips coming up, the thankful folks over in Jack Sparrow's crew replaced the missing footage with the original Japanese footage, so we're unfortunately going to have to start flipping between subbed and dubbed anime for a bit. Don't worry about it, because it will allow me to introduce the climactic appearance of something that absolutely shocked teenager me when he found pictures of it online. I feel only pure godlike bliss that all 6 of you that I called out earlier have no idea what's coming. Enjoy!
優勝は私たちがいただくわ。小次郎、何よ、あんた男でしょ？
いいの。私の美しさには男も女もないの。さてと、サービス。
突然乱入した大人のお姉さん2人組。自分は決して嫌いではありませんが、果たして観客の反応は。
10年早いのよ、ぼよよ。
Misty, you stupid bitch. You're supposed to wait until puberty's done with you so you can show off your new sweet rack. But that's not the point. Let me say a brief word or two about this clip, despite the fact that Jesse's hot as fuck Japanese voice is gonna distract me the entire time. On the outset, I really wish this episode was never made. Putting Misty through what amounts to a child beauty pageant is awful, because child beauty pageants shouldn't exist, and if you don't spend your life personally disowning any family member that you have who condones them, well then I'm gonna spend the rest of my life waiting for you to step outside your front door with a baseball bat in my hand. But the other comment I wanted to make is, yep, I 100% get it. And in fact, I'm probably behind the decision. Don't get me wrong. I love giant tits and pornography, and I think America is embarrassingly conservative when it comes to sexuality. That's not a joke. I actually really do believe that. But Pokemon is a show for kids, and you just can't be doing that, you know what I mean? The plotline of a character dressing as the opposite sex to gain entry to something they want, say special privileges or specific prizes, is extremely old and almost entirely done in a good-natured way to make surface-level jokes on the different lifestyles men and women go through. There's nothing wrong with tackling that when it's done tastefully, but despite the fact that James would absolutely have me asking some very hard questions about myself if I wasn't already extremely comfortable with the idea of fucking a man, you can't just have the guy literally gesticulating his chesticles and inflating them like balloons. It's too much. I'll hold off on more specific judgment until the episode is over, but so far I'm on the camp of, yeah, it should have been taken down. Next come Ekans and Coughing in the costume portion, doing an impression of an Almond Knight, which is a shitty and terrible one, so the best character in the show is gonna step in to have it stop being shitty and terrible.
Ash, I know you're out there in the crowd somewhere, but I didn't come here to make you jealous of me, Ash. I came here so some of my beautiful fan club members could make you jealous of me.
Damn, this rap beef goes hard and really made me miss when Pokemon rivals had teeth. No one throughout the years in Pokemon, or hell, nearly any other franchise, knew just how to piss a guy off like Gary motherfucking Oak. This is an open entry beauty contest hosted by a foreign tourist island. Gary isn't even an entrant, and yet his first command as he wrestles the microphone away is to call Ash a bitch-ass loser, who is a kid that 99% of the audience don't even know. That's moxie, I tell ya.
Ash snaps Pikachu's neck in a race to start the playground smackdown, and Gary's fan club, a collection of 6 girlfriends he has, which is perfectly normal for a 10-year-old, I had that, begin flaunting all over the beach contest since they're allowed to compete at the same time for some reason. Jesse and James get super pissed at the bimbos flouncing their stuff better than them, until Brutella scoops them away.
I knew all along that you 3 were really from Team Rocket.
Oh, really? Really? You know that information? Is it because they washed up on the beach while they were wearing their uniforms with giant red R's on them? You know, the same ones they've changed into right now for this scene for no reason? The uniforms that they were wearing when they fucking came out of their Gyarados submarine? Is that how you obtain this information, Brutella, you fucking sorceress? Brutella blackmails Team Rocket out of the contest and into destroying it because, as I discussed earlier, she's kind of a dumb piece of shit. And while that starts, Ash bum rushes the stage, threatening to kick Gary's ass because, I mean, you know, let's be honest, there's no rules or structure left to this thing anymore. Doubling down on that point, Brock steps in to hold Ash back from a potential fist fight, and he's supposed to be the announcer of this whole thing, but fuck it, I guess. The Gyarados submarine turns into a tank and storms the beach like Normandy, but Ash calls out that it's not a real sea dragon monster and it's a phony. Team Rocket logically responds by firing a fucking missile at him. Brock correctly deduces from his thousands of hours in Call of Duty that it's a heat-seeking missile, and Ash sends out Pidgeotto and Charmander who, without being instructed on any of this, know to link up and wait for Ash to call for Flamethrower to lure the missile away toward Team Rocket. And then things end. Somehow Mo gets to keep his boat even though the entire beauty contest prize money raising effort was fully derailed by a literal terrorist attack, which is fine because it results in the funniest joke of the entire show. Ash's mom won the beauty contest, and with a badonk like that, I'm not surprised.
This episode could have easily been salvageable. Just change Misty to any adult woman. Say this woman befriends the main protagonist and through some silly mix-up is the one to break the dock and she has to pay it back. The gang decides to help her out, culminating in them befriending Mo as well and then giving a shit about his problems, ultimately earning us a reason for our beauty contest. James doesn't even have to cross-dress since the plot still makes perfect sense if it's just Jessie that enters and gets mad that she's being upstaged. And if you really want to include the silliness of James being a contestant, then you don't have to give him giant fake tits. He's already stupid hot. Hell, you know, I would say that plot actually makes a lot more sense all around, and it avoids any and all parts of the episode coming off as creepy. I'm fully behind this one getting pulled, and I'm really confused why it was even considered a good idea, but with some small adjustments, it's actually really workable. Oh well, I mean, it's a good thing that one was harmless. Aside from some questionable scenes, it was all jovial and fun. That's the perfect segue for me to talk about this next one, because it's so much more controversial in an entirely unpleasant and not fun way.
Holiday Hi-Jynx begins with Jessie pretending to be asleep so that Team Rocket can kidnap Santa Claus to steal everyone's presents. Oh my god, that is fucked. After testing that their trap works on a dressed-up James, Jessie recounts in a flashback the story of why she has a personal vendetta against Kris Kringle.
Santa Claus is a trickster? Oh, I saw with my own eyes that he's a trickster and a thief. Jinx.
And the episode is banned. I lied to you. I tricked you. I mentioned that I'll be going over all the episodes, but I don't need to talk about this one any further. There's nothing else interesting to talk about in it, so it would just be a straightforward review, and that's not the point of this video. If you're curious, Ash and company find a Jinx washed up on a beach. The Jinx psychically projects its origin story into their minds, and they find out she belongs to Santa Claus. They vow to bring her back to the North Pole, and on the way there, they meet a Lapras who can speak telepathically. Even though Lapras isn't a psychic type, this show is written by morons, but we do get this absurd line out of it.
Santa Claus asked me to search for one of his Jinx. It's been missing for quite a while.
Team Rocket show up, Meowth tells a joke that references Japanese kotatsus that most kids probably didn't even notice. And then all sorts of shenanigans ensue as Team Rocket holds Santa hostage so they can steal everyone's presents, which is just such a dick move. The whole Santa Jessie thing was a misunderstanding. Whatever, Team Rocket's plan is foiled. Santa delivers presents with a magical flying Ponyta, which is not a flying type. I hate these fucking writers. And Jessie, James, and Meowth are doomed to an eternal purgatory of sleep as punishment for their crimes. None of this matters. You're smart.
You can probably see what the problem was. This episode got Pokemon in hot water for allegations of blackface. Now, before we get anywhere in this topic, here's a big fucking disclaimer all over the screen, so please close Photoshop and pay attention to me with your eyes instead of just looking at the brush options on your tablet. Blackface is bad. Racism is bad. Me having to remind you, the audience, with this is also bad, but one, YouTube doesn't trust me or any other creator on this website and will gladly kick me out for even thinking that I'm doing anything beyond trying to have an adult discussion with you all. And two, some of you out there are actually just stupid, or children, or both. Children kind of stupid by default, and you're gonna think that this next segment has me defending prejudice in any form, which is not true. And if you need to, go ahead and ask your parents to explain my next words to you so that you can figure out that's not at all what I'm saying. Let's go back to cultural differences. Jynx very well may have roots in terrible racist stereotypes. Black people throughout history of nearly every international culture have been drawn and depicted in very unflattering ways. The influence of racist caricatures on Japanese culture is far too complex for this video and impossible to determine on a case-by-case basis. Jynx very well may have been a case of Japan not seeing any harm in having a character depicted like this, and localization to a much more diverse country brought it under the line of fire. And if you don't believe me, let's go ahead and watch together a clip from 2017's Gaki no Tsukai annual Batsu game, which is a giant comedy special that airs every single year to millions and millions of Japanese citizens. Come on. You could not do this in America. Straight up. You could not get away with this in America, and yet this clip is from 2017, only 7 years ago as of this video, and everyone in Japan is laughing. Cultural differences. And in fact, the referencing may have cut on a deeper intentional level than people anticipated. Jynx being Santa's helpers in the anime may be a reference to Black Pete, a traditional helper of Santa Claus who's often seen paraded around Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, who is literally a guy depicting an African man by wearing blackface. Ooh, history really isn't helping your case, Pokemon. So with all that preamble and safety netting out of the way, I now think I feel safe enough to get through this line to discuss what I actually think Jynx is. From my research, I found two very credible potential sources for Jynx's origin, and I believe them to be much more likely explanations. The level of international ignorance in her design will be up to debate probably forever, but I do think one of these two concepts, or a mixture of both, explains why she's the way she was. The first is that Jynx is a parody of Ganguro fashion, a popular fashion sense in Japan from the 80s and 90s, where girls would intentionally get golden brown tans, grow out their hair, and dye it all sorts of gaudy colors. Game Freak, the creators of the Pokemon games, were headquartered near Shibuya, Tokyo at the time, specifically very close to some popular Ganguro pop culture hangout spots. In fact, this extrapolates itself when you get to the second Pokemon generation and meet Smoochum, the baby version of Jynx, who very well may be a parody of Garumamas, which are basically Ganguro girls who become mothers at early ages and balance parenting with being fashionistas. Now this makes sense because Jynx isn't even remotely the first entirely humanoid Pokemon in the original 151. There's the Machop line, Hitmonchan, and Hitmonlee. Those are all just dudes, except Hitmonlee has a horrific neck problem. I mean, seriously, they are just strong men and there's nothing else there. Jynx could be a parody of Japanese culture the same way that Hitmonchan is a parody of professional boxing. It makes complete sense for a company situated in Japan before the modern internet. The second explanation explanation is that Jynx is a parody of the yokai Yama-uba. Yokai are traditional ghosts and spirits from Japanese folklore and stories. If you don't really understand because you're out there desperately craving a television show where women throw wine at each other and begin slapping one another because you're an American like I am and that's just damn good entertainment, think of them as like Paul Bunyan, Johnny Appleseed, or Benjamin Franklin. Yama-uba, also known as Yamamba or Yamanba, is said to be a nasty old woman with long, unkempt golden hair and a tattered kimono or robe. This spirit waits in the mountains to devour lone travelers using a mouth hidden in her hair. Oh hey, you know what the mountains are? Cold. Jynx is a fucking ice type. No one ever really brings that fact up in discussions I find about her, but that makes so much more sense when you notice that outside of the obvious Arctic wildlife inclusion parallels to real life, Pokemon almost always equates their ice Pokemon to mountains and cave regions. I mean, to me, it wouldn't make the most sense for the Pokemon Company to just make a black person Pokemon and call it a day. The specifically contrasting flowing blonde hair, ice typing, and something I haven't mentioned yet, operatic Viking stylings depicting her singing in many various iterations and swirly buxom figure being similar to a typical opera fat lady, all say to me that I think they wanted to depict an icy themed creepy lady and made the very unfortunate tone-deaf decision to also give her a jet black face and large pink lips. So what happened with this one? Well, the episode was pulled thanks to one Carol Boston Weatherford, an American children's book and poetry author. Back in 2000, she wrote a handful of articles condemning certain properties for being culturally insensitive, key among them being Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z. Now, a little side note, because I found this kind of funny, Carol's gripe with Dragon Ball Z was pretty obviously Mr. Popo. But the defense that I see for Mr. Popo from a lot of fans is either A, Mr. Popo is an alien or deity, he's not supposed to represent a specific race, or B, his design comes directly from Mahakala, which is the wrathful manifestation of Buddha, right down to the appearance and the fact that they're both guardian figures to their respective canons that are acting as servants to higher powers. But then there's Staff Officer Black, who is just a black guy. And Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball Z, decided to draw him like this. So, yeah. Anywho, Carol wrote a prominent critic think piece called Politically Incorrect Pokemon. I'll link a re-upload in the description, and among other descriptors, Carol calls Jynx an overweight drag queen masquerading as a racist stereotype. This letter, along with other outrage, forced Nintendo to act, pulling it from all television networks and eventually scrubbing the episode from the history books. The status of this episode today is dicey. Although it was seen every now and then on on-demand services, it's not available anywhere in dubbed form except for the VHS and DVD physical releases made before the controversy. In terms of finding the Japanese version online, rumor has it shifts in and out of rotation on Japanese streaming platforms. During a 15-year anniversary event of Pokemon in Japan, the episode was aired on television again, but Jynx was recolored to have purple skin, and by the time the international releases of Gold, Silver, and Crystal hit other countries besides Japan, her sprite was permanently changed, and this became her new design. And I gotta say, I like it a lot more. Obvious political safety net aside, I think it better complements her color palette and makes her look more like an ice type because of frostbite and all that shit. Not at all surprised this slipped through the cracks in the early 2000s when the internet wasn't yet a super convenient tool for foreign localization teams to do a little fact-checking with, but I absolutely think the change is without a doubt the best move. Jynx's appearance went on to get further episodes of the show edited or banned outright, but this is the one that really prominently displayed the controversy. Okay, can I be funny again? I know that story is interesting, but goddammit, it's just not funny and potentially uncomfortable. Let's talk about something much funnier. Gun violence! The Legend of Miniryu actually wouldn't be called that in the dimension where it made it to American airwaves because Miniryu, which I'm bastardizing I know, is Dratini's Japanese name. Instead, the Legend of Miniryu, which I am going to call the Legend of Dratini for the rest of the video for clarity, is going deeper into the censorship cave because it actually never aired anywhere outside of Asia, which means it never even got to be dubbed in English. Back in the day when Pokemon was bursting into the West, 4 Kids, a name which probably just made many of you shiver in horror, had the localization rights. And 4 Kids took one look at this episode and immediately said, nope, nope, fuck that, no fucking way, we're not airing that. Now, I would normally have to rely on the subtitled version to review this episode because there was no official English dub, and I would rather eat broken glass for breakfast than try to convince a modern-era YouTube audience to actually pay the fuck attention to what they're watching. Do you really think that I can keep up with shorts content and second monitor gaming? Get the fuck out of here. So I want to extend a huge thanks to Nifty Halo Studios and 4Fans Entertainment, who created a fan English dub of this episode it's decent. I'll be using clips for that for my own convenience. By the way, to those people in those groups, if you get your work pulled off the internet because of copyright claims because of this video, I'm sorry. So I'm not going to link this fan dub anywhere because I don't want link scanning bots or copyright bots to find it. You can easily track it down yourself with creative Googling, and if any of you are going to make fun of any of their performances in the comments, I just want you to know that I will find out where you live and make out with your parents in front of you, because the fact that we have this dub at all is kind of a blessing and is going to make this a lot more convenient. So fuck you, let's get started. Our protagonists, Aiden, Mandy, and Blake, show up for a hike in one of our mini national parks, and okay, I got desperate. The joke's a localization joke. I just needed some jokes to wash the dour taste out of my mouth from that last segment. I promise the video gets funny again. Ash and friends have arrived at the Safari Zone, and they're singing jaunty tunes about their adventures until an old man cowboy shows up to ruin absolutely everything.
Oh, how I'd really like to catch a break today,
Be quiet! If you're just here to annoy the Pokemon with that dreadful singing, then leave.
We're here to catch the Pokemon!
You're not poachers, are you?
Okay, mystery solved why it was banned. Moving on. No, okay, I can't just do that. I need the video to be longer for precious ad revenue and to hit YouTube's algorithm even more intensely, and more importantly, to make you smile more. Yay! The gun isn't a prop as part of a fake cowboy cosplay. It's not a fake out of him aiming somewhere else to protect them. It is absolutely loaded, and things are absolutely gonna get worse. This rootin' tootin' blastin' boy introduces himself as Kaiser, which is the official Japanese name I'll be rolling with for this script, since again, the episode was never dubbed in English. Kaiser runs the entrance of the Safari Zone, which I'm sure most of you remember from the games as being the place where you can catch wild Pokemon one-on-one with lots of Safari balls instead of using your own Pokeballs in Pokemon.
My Pokemon too.
You may only use Safari Balls and a fishing rod to catch the Pokemon here. Anyone found breaking this rule will be dealt with severely.
Severely?
I mean, yeah, this is kind of worse. I was ready to pull the episode the first time a 10-year-old boy had a gun pointed at him, but they really swiftly and purposely drilled what's happening into the audience's minds here. What I find most funny to analyze is how overtly upsetting this imagery would be to tons of people when the reality of Pokemon is potentially so much worse. The Pokemon world, especially in the anime, usually seems to present the most idealized version of its universe, where people use these actual creatures of legend to further toil along in mundane life, where a living flamethrower is just used to barbecue some meat, and a Pokemon made out of the earth itself will just find themselves taking up the most menial, back-breaking positions at construction sites. Let's just call this universe for exactly what it is and apply reality to it. If Pokemon were real and their entire capacity was harvested for humanity's use, all that would happen is an immediate combination of societal breakdown in favor of reckless superpower use and a gigantic interspecies orgy for about 5 minutes, until the one fucker who obtained a god status Pokemon decided to poof the universe out of existence just because they could. But in the designed world of Pokemon, people try to live what we experience as normal daily lives alongside creatures of terrible destruction that keep their potential reined in at all times purely because this is a family-friendly property. I mean, hell, if we took what I just said onto a more benevolent planet Earth, all worldwide hunger and clean water water deficiency would be cured instantaneously thanks to some conveniently shipped around grass and water types. We, in the best of outlooks, could use these creatures to end humanity's suffering. And the Pokemon world doesn't do that either. It exists in a never-ending state of paralleling the ordinary society. And what does that mean for our analysis? Well, there's one simple truth that's going to happen in this instance, whether the showrunners meant it or not. That gun is scary, because guns are scary. At least they are to countries that aren't Japan. Now, go ahead and leave your comments below arguing about your opinions on the Second Amendment. I well and truly don't give a fuck, and I'm never, ever, ever gonna read them, because this video is scheduled to go up when I have an appointment with your mother to teach her what I do to your father. I am just going to recite statistics as a potential explanation on how pointing a firearm at a child for comedic effect was something that came to pass in a Japanese cartoon. In 1997, the year this episode premiered, Japan experienced about 148 acts of gun violence in the entire country, with only about 22 of them being fatal incidents, the majority of which were either organized crime battles or self-inflicted. In America in 1997, that number was about 32,000 deaths alone. And if we include non-fatal shootings, then America outweighs Japan in gun crimes by a factor of 652 to 1. To the Japanese audience, Kaiser may as well be pointing a magic wand in Ash's face. This entire display is absurdist in how rare it is, and I know that's true because former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was assassinated by a homemade gun in 2022. The gun fired 2 shots, the second of which killed him, but people reported in Japan that they didn't react to the first one because they assumed it to be fireworks or a car tire popping. Cultural differences. Now, to be fair, to be absolutely fair and transparent, the homemade gun was reported to have sounded different than an ordinary commercially available firearm, which could have influenced why people didn't immediately think gunshots. But level with me here. Let's be fucking honest with each other. There are plenty of Americans whose first thoughts would have been gun if they heard a sudden explosion in the street. All of this is to say, knowing what I know now as an adult, if I'm role-playing as someone really trying to keep things as family-friendly as possible, then you can show me cartoony violence brought forth by the hands of creatures with blades for hands, explosions in their lungs, and electric chairs in their cheeks. But showing me this image right here is not even remotely a stretch to convey something that feels a bit real. This is not the 1940s anymore. You can't just depict realistic gun violence with a real actual gun for laughs in children's programming like Looney Tunes did. And even if you want to, the fact it's a grown man callously pointing it at a child directly in his face is still kinda, I could potentially just stop here like I did for the Jynx episode and not review this one anymore, because there's not really much more real-world lore to tie in, and it's just kind of a matter of taste in the decision by 4Kids to pull the plug, especially since this episode never ended up airing in America unlike the previous 2. I suppose they could have gone the Yu-Gi-Oh route and clumsily edited Kaiser to just be aggressively pointing at Ash alongside some other cuts to the episode, but there's just so much of it that features guns prominently I could see how they just want to scrub the whole thing to be a more family-friendly oriented property. In fact, there's other bits of interesting trivia on how this episode really shook things up that come from later in the episode, so let's keep watching. Misty finds an old photo of Kaiser that shows him palling around with Dratini, but Kaiser snags it away, claiming there's no Dratini, and if anyone keeps asking him about it, well, he's switching to hollow points. We get some backstory that Kaiser discovered a Dratini with Professor Oak way back in the day, and the publicity of such a find, even though you can find an infinite number of them by just using a super rod in the Safari Zone, caused people to flock to the Safari Zone, destroying the nature and disturbing the wildlife. Since then, Kaiser has decided that that shouldn't ever happen again because Pokemon aren't meant to be caught? That's stupid. Kaiser is old and stupid. Team Rocket are on the roof, eavesdropping on the conversation because it's slowly dawning on me how pathetic it is that a bumbling pair of gangsters do nothing but stalk a group of equally bumbling children for a living, and they aim to capture not only Dratini, but every Pokemon in the Safari Zone. Which is fine. The Safari Zone Pokemon are explicitly up for capture, and in fact that space was made to facilitate Pokemon catching. I haven't watched the rest of the episode yet, but if anyone starts to persecute Team Rocket for catching up for grabs Pokemon, I'm gonna start flipping tables. Jesse and James announce their plan to the group, and then this happens.
I said get down from there!
I can't say that this is much of a fair fight!
That is a comical amount of bullets in an instance where deadly force wasn't even remotely necessary, and it's concrete proof that those are real firearms. In fact, the original Japanese recording has Kaiser referring to his gun as Thunderbolt, which is a reference to the Clint Eastwood film Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, who Kaiser is a parody of. My point is, he's not fucking shooting paintball. Team Rocket challenge Ash and pals to a Pokemon catching competition that they promise will be fair and square, even referencing feudal samurai when promising on their code of honor to play fair, meaning we now get to go ahead and ban this episode in South Korea too. I swear to God, the next Pokemon they run into is probably going to be Winnie the Pooh, and then we're going to have to scrub this entire thing from Chinese airwaves, but that's just a joke. This episode probably never will exist on Chinese airwaves because China fucking hates Japan too. Do any Asian countries actually like Japan? Seriously, while writing the script, I did a little Googling and it's looking kinda bleak. The stakes are simple. If Team Rocket wins, they'll leave Ash and his friends alone forever. But if they lose, Ash has to give them all of his Pokemon. Again, nothing nefarious here unless you consider legitimate gambling contracts nefarious, and in which case, what are you, the American Gambling Association? Shut the fuck up, narc. A herd of pissed off Tauros charged toward the group with the express intent of killing them because there were some Tauros pheromones wafting behind them. But Ash and Brock effortlessly catch one with a Safari Ball, which really just pissed off inner 10-year-old me at how easy that was, but fine, whatever. A montage of Ash trying to catch more Pokemon ensues, but who cares? Let's just get to the juicy shit. Team Rocket has taken a secondary route to winning the contest, which I'm gonna go ahead and say is cheating. Hell, watch this and judge for yourself.
Now, if you don't cooperate and tell us where Dratini is, we shall be forced to use your own weapons against you.
I'm gonna assume holding 2 guns to the Game Warden's head to get him to tell you the secret location of a rare Pokemon is cheating, but Team Rocket, you could go further. Keep 1 gun on Kaiser and go shoot Ash and his friends with the other. Look, yes, it's terrible, but the show has already suggested the possibility of Ash being shot. I'm just thinking pragmatically here. Use the tools you are given. Why haven't Team Rocket killed Ash yet? It would solve literally everything. A scuffle breaks out and Kaiser is restrained in a recreation of literal fetish porn that I've seen on the internet. Team Rocket impersonates a legitimate hard-boiled detective interrogation to find out Dratini's location, complete with Meowth sporting a Hitler mustache. Because this episode is banned as fuck by this point, why not just throw in everything we could think of?
What on earth?
Meet Ticklebot, your purpose information extraction device.
And yet again with the fetish porn, it just never stops. The gravy train's out there for you freak artists. While Team Rocket unexpectedly just opened a long discussion for the car ride home about sexual fulfillment and exploration, Misty shows off her water trainer prowess by fishing in the Safari Zone with her special lure. The gang managed to hook a real Gyarados, meaning they'll be dead in about 8 seconds, but the line thankfully snaps, meaning there's one less thing to worry about while Brock tries to unshit pants. Kaiser shows up in need of help getting the device off of him, and Ash's brilliant idea is to try to explode its batteries by zapping a man with a most likely lethal charge of volts. The boneheaded scheme pays off, and a newly freed Kaiser explains in a shocking plot twist that Team Rocket are a bunch of dicks. The bunch of dicks find a Dratini, but it slips away before they can catch it. Meowth suggests... Meowth suggests that in yet another moment of this being the most badass and savage episode in Pokemon history, flushing Dratini out of the lake by dynamite fishing. Wow, this would be my new favorite episode of the series ever if the one where Squirtle takes a massive chunk out of Charmander's face didn't exist. Ash arrives with his party posse and they proclaim the contest is over, but Jessie, forever the baddest bitch in the Kanto region, throws a ticking bomb into a pool of innocent wildlife. And Kaiser dives in to save the precious Dratini that I want to remind everyone there are an infinite supply of. Imagine someone diving after a torpedo to save an electric eel from getting hit. It's just stupid. Ash dives in to save Kaiser because a fully grown adult's most powerful ally in a submerged nuclear bomb situation is a 10-year-old boy, and Misty, being the only character with a brain, summons her mystical creatures built from birth for the water to help. Now, this next thing I'm going to point out has nothing to do with any of the points of this YouTube video that I'm crafting, but okay, most of you watching this are probably familiar with the classic Pokemon anime era. You remember how Staryu and Starmie had the undoubtedly coolest cries in the entire series? Well, the fan dub I'm using tries to do the same thing with Staryu and...
Staryu, help Ash and Kirkhan! Yeah!
Well, they tried. Kaiser searches for the bomb underwater despite never opening his eyes, and Ash uses Staryu as a diver propulsion vehicle, which here's a picture of it, because you no doubt recognize what it is, but don't remember what it's called. Staryu is ordered to take Kaiser to the surface, since he's probably out of air, but I just have to be the adult intelligence in the room, because stupid children's show logic means that if the plan was for that to happen, why not have both Staryu and Starmie go down, so Ash could travel at 4 times the speed underwater while simultaneously rescuing Kaiser. Boy, this harmless cartoon age appropriate for 5 years old and up sure has sloppy, inconsistent writing. Ash finds the bomb and fucking deservedly drowns with it, but then Dragonair shows up and saves him and kills Team Rocket, blah blah blah. Hey, here's an unrelated clip from a totally different episode.
Super potion, please! Oh no, I don't need a new gun. Don't shoot me, please!
Okay, so what the fuck? I thought the entire point was a guy with guns showed up in a universe that really doesn't need them and threatened a child with them. Well, from what I could gather, the main issue with The Legend of Dratini is this part right here. That's the line that got crossed for this episode to get pulled, and a handful of other gun-related ones to stay on the air. Hell, in the other episode I just referenced, which is Here Comes the Squirtle Squad, Jessie has a bazooka. Isn't it funny how rocket launchers are pretty much always okay in kids' media, but rifles and handguns are where we get to the gray area, even though the rocket launcher is probably God knows how much more dangerous. I think we're back to my argument before of not wanting to conjure familiar imagery. American households could easily have a pistol, but if your gun safe has an RPG-7, then you better fucking invite me over to dinner because your family sounds really cool. So what did this episode actually fuck up? Well, some stuff that's actually pretty noticeable. First off, the footage of Dratini, Dragonair, and Rhyhorn used in the poker app at the end of the English dub episodes were taken from The Legend of Dratini, meaning 4Kids absolutely got a hold of the raw episode before deciding to pull the plug. But more importantly, there's a huge shocking plot twist that some of you out there are going to learn from this video, and I am very fucking excited if I'm the person that breaks this whole mystery wide open for you. You see, during the course of this episode, there's a running joke that during the Pokemon catching contest between Ash and Jessie, anytime Ash goes to launch a Safari Ball at a Pokemon, a herd of Tauros comes running into the way, meaning that Ash accidentally ends up catching a Tauros. Ash has 30 Safari Balls, and he catches 30 Tauros. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're old and decrepit like me, you were absolutely a kid watching this show premiere and wondered, wait, what the fuck? When did Ash suddenly get 30 Tauros? Through the last half of the first season. Well, here it is. I am glad I can put this on public record for you. This is the reason why this episode never aired. I distinctly fucking remember being a wee baby boy, and I thought I accidentally missed the episode that showed Ash catching all of those Tauros. Remember, this is the days before any form of on-demand television shows that meant you could just watch any episode whenever the fuck you wanted, or any sort of streaming or anything. You had to catch the show on TV, and here I thought my cartoon obsession had a spot on its permanent record. I'm not kidding when I say this is my favorite part of my job. If even just one person watching this video stood up, comedically put their hands on their head and went, I had no fucking idea that's where the Tauros came from, then I'll have considered this video a success. But now we have to pivot toward failure. We have to talk about the Pokemon Company's greatest failure. and eventually how it led to the most hilarious thing Pokemon has ever done. Electric Soldier Porygon, more literally translated to Computer Warrior Porygon, was supposed to be the 38th episode of the original series. Instead, it was the most controversial and hardest banned episode of Pokemon ever. This thing was a monumentally terrible presentation wrapped up in a potential health threat that ultimately led to the funniest thing in Pokemon history. But we're getting there, don't worry, incredible microphone hand switch. I'm operating under the assumption that some people out there have never seen or heard these episodes or controversies before. I know the crux of my audience, naive young people and stupid old people. Let's just start the episode because before I say anything else that might give away the shock value, I want to talk about it. But I actually do in good faith have to give this disclaimer. For those of you who do know what this episode is, nothing harmful will appear in this video. All potentially dangerous content has been edited out. You are safe to watch. Enjoy.
Ash, Misty, and Brock arrive in Matcha City, confused why there's now subtitles all across the bottom of the screen. That's because this episode not only has no English dub, but it never aired a single time after its first and only premiere airing in Japan. Be happy we have this recording at all, folks. Besides, the very first thing that happens is Pikachu immediately creates a problem for localizers because he impersonates an elderly Japanese man beating his shoulder over some tea while Ash does a face fault. So they head to the Pokemon Center to rest up Pikachu, which has phones ringing off the hook because Nurse Joy promised free prostate exams to the entire city's Pokemon. In an entirely unrelated plot, the Pokemon Center's transfer machine is experiencing a major malfunction where the wrong Pokemon keep showing up. And this dork named Akihabara Hakase is doing what any great programmer does, loudly screaming that his code is perfect and absolutely nothing whatsoever could be wrong with it. Fun fact, Akihabara is a famous district in Tokyo known for its computer stores, maid cafes, and hobby shops, and it's all around a celebration of nerd culture. And I actually went there myself earlier this year, and it's okay. It's a nice place to buy posable figures, trading cards, and vintage electronics, but otherwise it's really not that exciting. But the biggest problem I personally had is how fucking small it is. Here's a photo I took while I was there shopping around. You see that guy on the left in the shorts? He was also a tourist, meaning he was also pretty tall. Also, hey, side note, you want to know how you can immediately tell it's a tourist if I show you photos of Japan? It's because he's wearing shorts. I don't get this one. People in Tokyo don't ever really wear shorts. It's true, I don't know why. I was there when it was hot outside. It was almost summer and no one was wearing shorts. Anywho, you see how his head was just shy of hitting the overhead air conditioner? Well, fun fact, I was a bit taller than him, and I had to spend half my time in Akihabara walking around like this. You wanna know what was the worst part? When the fucking tunnel to the train we had to take looked like this. Okay, look, I know the focal length of the shot is a bit weird. It's making my calves look disgustingly skinny, but there's no trick photography in the photo itself. This is just the straightest up that I could walk without wanging my head on the ceiling. And then we had to go up and down stairs like that. Japan needs to get with the times already and rebuild their entire country infrastructure to compensate for a random 6'4" foreigner. That tangent had nothing to do with Pokemon. I just saw the word Akihabara and got PTSD. I'm sorry, it's back to the actual real-life PTSD. Brock assumes there may be a computer virus, and Professor Akihabara, who just for convenience I'm going to call Professor Nerd because I feel like that would be his English name, storms out of the room. Ash and Misty track the professor down at his house to force him to continue working via slave labor, I guess? I don't know. And the guy lives in a giant spooky mansion for seemingly no other reason than maybe his life goal is to finally land a big titty goth girlfriend. There's some shenanigans about the booby traps in the professor's house, and eventually the group is led to a mysterious machine that contains one of the coolest Pokemon ever, Porygon. We'll have a lot to say about him later. Trust me, a lot. Professor Nerd did actually manage to diagnose the problem, though. It turns out Team Rocket broke into his house, stole one of his Porygon, and transferred themselves into the computer world to continue to steal more Pokemon. I just gotta say, Team Rocket condemning themselves to an obviously inescapable hellscape just to steal rare Pokemon is incredible commitment to the bit. If the antivirus program at the Pokemon Center is run, Team Rocket will die, which doesn't seem so bad. But because there's a stupid thing in most protagonists called empathy, a new method of extraction must be used, and so the trio are blasted into the digital world.
Whoa! What the fuck? That teleporter is fucking broken. And I know that tons of totally unoriginal people are going to spam Vaporeon-based jokes in my comments over this. But that's okay, because I actually do these things to manipulate engagement from you, because doing so is easier than eating a bowl of cereal. Oh, also, that clip is a fan-made edit by an artist named Mancor, so my personal apologies to all of you perverts out there who are willing to suffer through the entire upcoming mental assault that this episode provides just to see some canonical fetish fan service, you sick fucks. It turns out the digital world is like that series of bureaucracy tubes from Futurama, and I'm so glad I finally get to check out this episode outside of screenshots, because I finally learned Porygon's cry in the show is utterly hilarious. That fucking Banshee scream absolutely says to me creature from the internet. The Pokeballs are transferred along a literal information superhighway, and Team Rocket's plan to keep the good Pokemon for themselves is to block it with a digital roadblock. The episode here plays sounds of traffic and car horns honking during this, which I thought was pretty cute. Porygon, with a back full of bastards, shows up much to the dismay of Team Rocket, who go about their usual defense of attacking with Arbok and Weezing. But Porygon counterattacks by changing its type to poison for pretty much no reason and beating some ass. Team Rocket then counterattack with the Porygon they stole from the Professor, and it's a battle between the poorly made renders. While the proof of concept duck renders duke it out, A, M, and B take advantage of the brawl to start freeing the trapped Pokeballs. Wait, play that again and zoom in. Hang on, play that again. Brock, Misty, what the fuck are you doing? Ash is clearing the barricades from the path, and you seem to be setting them back up. Hang on, let me guess. Brock, you approached Misty and said, Misty, you gotta help me maintain the barricade. If we do what Team Rocket wants, there's a chance that Jessie will change into another cute outfit. And I don't see a changing room or bathroom or anything here, so I'll probably see a bit of tit. Here, let's go push Ash over the edge so his soul will shatter somewhere in cyberspace between AOL and GeoCities. Team Rocket gets defeated and sent along the path of the traversing Pokeballs, but now there's a new problem. Nurse Joy called a computer repair salaryman to fix the virus, which they wouldn't have done if Professor Nerd knew how to communicate instead of just storming out the room like a whiny little bitch. And then Joy hangs up on the Professor immediately after telling him they're going to launch the antivirus, meaning that he has no way of telling her that she's about to kill 3 people, even though he could just call her back until she answered, but that'd be stupid. In comes the antivirus, which in Japan are called vaccine programs apparently, and it's a cute little ambulance, and it's out for fucking blood. Ash hops a ride on Porygon and tells Team Rocket that they better bail too, or their DNA is going to be rewritten to WWW. But Team Rocket are trapped in the Pokeball jet stream and make one last minute escape effort thanks to the other Porygon. The vaccine turns into an X-Wing from Starfighters. No, that's not a joke. I mean, look at this fucking thing, and it takes after them, firing some missiles, and... And that's all I can show you. What happens next is a legitimate attack on the viewing audience. You see, the animation department decided that the missiles the vaccine fires should correspond to the bright neon color palette of the digital world. This color palette expresses itself as a series of bright, flashing red and blue lights. Behind me right now are stills from the actual episode. These are not color fills that I did for effect, these are actual screenshots, and these screens flash on screen for 6 uninterrupted seconds. Now sometimes, in other segments, they flash again as obscured by characters. But the entire last half of this episode has a lot of this strobing on your screen at full brightness, and it's constant. I cannot show you this footage on YouTube because it would be a real public health hazard. People with epilepsy could very, very easily be triggered into a seizure. And among anyone else watching, there would be no surprise if it caused migraines, blurred vision, blindness, dizziness, convulsions, unconsciousness, and nausea, because that's exactly what happened. Over 600 children in Japan were sent to the hospital from watching this episode, and the Japanese media dubbed the incident as Pokemon shock. Complaints ranged from migraines to blurred vision, blindness, dizziness, convulsions, unconsciousness, nausea, and actual seizures. Of the over 600 viewers who called an ambulance, most of them made a quick recovery, but about 150 of them had to be admitted to the hospital, with 2 of them staying for over 2 weeks. An estimated 5 to 10% of the whole viewing audience experienced some of the symptoms listed but didn't seek medical treatment. And that includes me fucking 27 years later. My tummy still hurts as I'm typing this script. Recording Hugbees will probably feel better, but script writing Hugbees is still suffering. Yep, I remember writing that. This made national news in Japan following the night that it premiered, as well as the morning after. And because of that, OLM Inc., the studio that animates the Pokemon anime, responded with, "Fuck you guys, we underpaid hundreds of staff animators and separated them from their families to have that cartoon rushed out the door in time. We're gonna marathon it in every single time slot we can, you ungrateful cocks." Okay, obviously I'm kidding. The episode was pulled from every conceivable place it could be seen and has never again aired in any form, edited or otherwise. If you care about what happens for the rest of the episode, why? Ash and company cause more neurological damage for 6 minutes and then escape and everyone lives happily ever after, and that's not important anymore. Let's move on to the cool stuff. TV Tokyo, the station that provided the world with the grand premiere of Porygon's mystical seizure machine, issued a public apology and removed the program from their rotation. And a full police investigation was launched on the show's producers about their entire production process, allegedly to confiscate all their handwritten books called How to Destroy the Youth of Japan. Perhaps most comedic of all, aside from the children suffering, but this part's actually hysterical, the then president of Nintendo, Hiroshi Yamauchi, figured that the best way to sidestep the negative press about the entire Pokemon franchise and having it leach into the video games getting flack was to remind people that the original Game Boy was in black and white, and therefore the Pokemon games couldn't give people seizures. I think that's fucking brilliant. And honestly, the new tagline for my channel that I'm going to put everywhere is Hugbees, epileptic seizure-free content. The series had to take an entire 4-month hiatus because of this debacle, and part of the reason it wasn't canceled outright was a flood of viewer letters that poured in begging for the show to stay on the air, which proves why Pokemon is the biggest franchise in the world these days. It can almost kill your children and still have them beg for more. The entire debacle actually instituted new regulations in Japanese programming to further prevent incidents like this from happening, right down to dictating how long certain colors can be shown on screen. We also got both South Park and The Simpsons to parody this incident in their own styles of humor. And perhaps most interesting and honestly baffling of all, the episode was included in the Gamers edition of the Guinness World Records for most photosensitive epileptic seizures caused by a television show. No, I'm not making this up. I remember when writing this, I said, what the fuck? I know the Guinness World Records are an absolute scam that mean nothing, and they're just done by companies and celebrities to drum up business and publicity, but no, really, what the fuck? And this is another mystery I might be solving for some of you out there. If you've ever gone back and watched classic episodes of Pokemon on like Netflix or wherever, and you see that the screen gets really dark during flashy moments like Pikachu's Thunderbolt and other similar things, you can blame Porygon's stupid digital adventure directly for that change. Except it wasn't his fault, goddammit. The most seizure-inducing moment isn't even caused by him. The 6 uninterrupted seconds of literal solid blocks of color that I talked about are caused by Pikachu. He uses his electricity to destroy incoming missiles, and that's what causes it to happen. But Pikachu is the golden child and my precious digital duck, the martyr, because Porygon really did fucking get the blame for this episode. Porygon and his evolutions have been banned from ever appearing in the Pokemon anime ever again. Which is such bullshit, because Pokemon themselves even went ahead and made an official apology in 2020 just to walk it back and delete it. In 2020, in a now deleted tweet, Pokemon officially said this: Porygon did nothing wrong. Damn straight he didn't, and I have a lot to say about the matter. It's finally time, finally fucking time, I've been waiting all video for this, for me to talk about my favorite Pokemon of all time, and the funniest thing that Pokemon has ever done. Now, I already made a video on this topic long ago, but that was years ago when my channel was significantly smaller and my video format wasn't nearly as good as it is now. It was a lot rougher, it was just not as good. I'm gonna tell this story again because it's excellent and I need every human being on the planet to hear it. Oh, excuse me, what happens to be there? Is the description of that video containing a link to my gaming channel, Hugbee's Gamer Mode? Well, I may as well reiterate that part first. Hugbee's Gamer Mode is my well-established and beloved gaming channel where I post stuff I make purely for fun, meaning I'm injecting raw creative spirit and passion into every video in direct contrast to how overly produced and money-hungry this website's become. If you like video games, podcast-style videos, or extremely handsome men narrating stuff, go ahead and watch it. If you don't, you're fucking dead to me. Anyway, let's talk about Porygon himself. Many Pokemons have themes in their lineage rather than just becoming bigger, badder versions of themselves. Take, for example, a really straightforward one. Caterpie evolves into Metapod, evolves into Butterfree. Pretty easy real-world parallel. A caterpillar builds a cocoon and comes out a butterfly. Okay, obvious, but let's talk about a more metaphorical example. Magikarp and Gyarados. The reason Magikarp, a dopey, worthless fish, evolves into a fearsome sea serpent is that it represents a famed Chinese mythology tale that says that any carp that can leap over a mystical waterfall called the Dragon's Gate somewhere in the Yellow River will transform into a dragon. Now, there's no real-world dragons flying around as far as I know, and I've never seen a fish become a dragon, but you get the idea. Magikarp and Gyarados represent that folklore, and if you dig around, there are plenty of other evolutionary lines that follow concepts rather than the real world. So now let's go back to Porygon. Porygon represents technology, and even more specifically, advancing technology. That's point one right there for why Porygon is my favorite Pokemon ever, because they foreshadowed this shit from the very beginning. And duh, Porygon being a fully digital Pokemon made of rudimentary 3D modeling shapes means that me saying he represents technology is undoubtedly news to very few people. Time passes. Generation 2, Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal arrive on the scene, and with it comes Porygon 2, which you can obtain by having a Porygon hold an item that is literally called Upgrade. Still pretty on the nose here, I know. I mean, just look at him. He's sleeker, more rounded, more detailed. He is a straight-up processing power upgrade to Porygon's DPU. That's his duck processing unit. 9 years pass. It is now 2006, and Pokemon has reached the 4th generation. Diamond and Pearl hit store shelves, and in it, many old beloved Pokemon receive new evolutions. Magneton, Sneasel, Electabuzz, Magmar, and a slew of others receive buffs in the form of new evolutionary forms, adding new, radical ideas to their established bases. So it's here that Game Freak, the developers of Pokemon, begin to think, well, what new radical idea can we put on our computer-based Pokemon? I mean, we already gave them a new form that's sleeker and faster than the original. We can't just do that again. So they come up with a new, fairly creative idea. A computer virus. Give Porygon a computer virus. Corrupt them real good. Show us what a glitched out Porygon 2 looks like. Well, ladies and gentlemen, he's finally here. My true favorite Pokemon of all time will appear on the screen right now. This is the byproduct of what happens when you trade a Porygon 2 with the dubious disc item. Here he comes. Porygon Z, which is Porygon 2 with a virus. Would you like to know what Porygon Z does when you throw him out in battle? He has a fucking seizure! He twitches around like a madman. He flails his head and all of his limbs, and he does not stop until he's dead. How did they get away with this? How the fuck did they get away with this? There's tons of other Pokemon episodes that are swathed in controversy, but you just can't get better than that in my opinion. Only one of them triggered an entire national health incident. There's no jumping through cultural barriers to understand it, and then if you're paying attention, it created an incredible joke. The most powerful franchise on the planet could have killed someone and been forced to scrap everything. Where do I go from there? I mean, maybe in the future I'll look at other banned Pokemon media like the trading cards, but for now, I just don't think there's much left to say that can top the bombshell that I just dropped. Instead, I hope you all leave here with a greater appreciation of the stories behind the shock headlines and screenshots that get passed around the internet. Because to me, learning these stories is so much more fulfilling than just glancing at single sentences posted on social media. Sometimes, by learning the decisions behind why things were changed, you can end up appreciating what you got even more. Sometimes the context that created something is even better than the actual product. And sometimes, you gotta use your trusty frying pan as a drying pan.